So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto Fell in Love with Rangiku Matsumoto, so let's start the series. Naruto gaped at the world in front of him. He didn't think it would get this terrible. He believed that he and his companions would march into battle and emerge together, alive but not unharmed. He thought that after they finished their ramen and resumed their daily goof-offs, he would ask Hinata out. He became aware of his naivety as he looked back on it. Death and casualties were inevitable in war. Well, it wasn't a war if it was. And regrettably, the biggest number of casualties in history occurred during the Fourth Shinobi War. He was the only one still alive among the thousands and millions of inhabitants living in the elemental nations. And he was solely to blame. After he turned 18 and finished his training with Killer Bee, it all began. The very shinobi they were aligned with stopped them when they attempted to depart the island where they had trained. He and Killer Bee had been ordered to remain there since they were the last Jinchuriki. They claimed that this edict was necessary for their protection against Madara. However, they were aware that they just did not want them to end up in the hands of the Uchiha founder like the others. And they were fools if they believed that Madara would stop with so few Chunin and Jounin around the island. But the communities realized that only a handful were required. Killer Bee and Naruto cherished their villages and would never do them any damage until absolutely necessary. They repeatedly attempted to convince them and to allow them to go and join the battle, but they were consistently unsuccessful. Then Madara showed up one day. He slashed through the ninja till he and Killer Bee were together. Killer Bee had a different plan than Naruto's to take him together. Killer Bee sent Naruto far from Madara using the Hachibi's ability without even consulting the blonde. Naruto knew, just knew, that his surrogate brother was dead when he woke up. He sensed it, and Kyuubi's statement that he felt the Hachibi's chakra rushing freely validated it. Madara controlled 8 of the 9 Bijuu, the Hachibi were free, Killer Bee was dead, and Naruto was incensed. His desire was to have Madara's head served to him. He hurried straight to join his pals after arriving at the battlefield, which was covered in dead and red from many people's blood. But what he discovered instantly transformed his rage into grief. They were losing and half of his friends were dead. He was able to join the battle after they grieved their loss, and he was reprimanded by many of the Kages for being present. Kabuto soon made his appearance and launched his reborn ninja upon their still weary army. They had told him to remain where he was, but who did they think he was? He was Naruto. He moved around. As Kakashi faced Kabuto, he charged the forces stocked on nature chakra. They fought the resurrected ninja for hours, knowing that Kakashi hadn't yet vanquished the would-be Orochimaru as long as they continued to appear. When they finally stopped arriving, he was filled with fear. He was unable to sense Kakashi's chakra. He discovered them both dead after running to where the silver-haired man had fought the snake. Kakashi's mask tore off, revealing a happy, pleased face with a hole where his heart should have been. Kabuto had been torn from every part of his body, leaving him completely unrecognizable. However, Naruto believed he was entitled to more. After 2 days of mourning, they were able to bury him by his father in Konoha by sealing his remains in a scroll. Sakura stayed by his side throughout those days. He was a source of solace for her in these circumstances. Kakashi needed something to hold on to after Sasuke went, and Naruto was happy to give it to her. He took solace in Hinata. He needed it, in spite of his outward appearance. One night, she came to him and let him scream it out since she could see through his disguise. He had also been confronted by Enko the following day. She could see one a mile away because she had her own mask. When his sensei's passing was still fresh in his thoughts, the two girls provided him with solace. Lee soon confessed to Sakura. At first, she was hesitant to approach people for fear of losing them again, but Naruto persuaded her to do so. Despite her agreement, she remained by Naruto's side, and Lee recognized this since he had already lost Guy to Sasori. At last, the resurrected Akatsuki arrived, armed and prepared to kill anybody who stood in their way and seize the last of the Jinchuriki. Since only he had previously vanquished Pain, he had faced him alone. While the others divided up the remaining Akatsuki among themselves, primarily in an attempt to overwhelm them with numbers, Sakura and Lee went for Sasori. There was no sign of Itachi. Because Pain was the actual him and not the corpse puppets he used to use, it was difficult to battle him this time. The man never backed down from an attack, and his Rinnegan was more powerful than before. When Naruto saw that the man's eyes were dull, he initially questioned why he was using the Akatsuki to attack. They were controlling him. The reasons to hate Madara and the Uchiha list was expanded by Naruto to include this additional reason. Naruto believed he was doomed when he got caught in the Shinra Tenshi. In the hopes that Kyuubi would cure him of whatever had happened to him, he had closed his eyes and waited for the hit. He opened his eyes and was appalled by what he saw when he felt no pain but a body in front of him. Anko. Her lips were dripping blood as the pole Pain was used through her chest. When he saw this, Pain appeared to regain some control since the shine lasted long enough for him to take the weapon away from the woman with the purple hair and leap back before they died again. As she looked up and grinned at his frightened expression, Anko had collapsed into his arms, her breath becoming more and more shallow. Her response to his question about why she did this was straightforward. "You share my pain." In his arms, she passed away. He gazed at her corpse for a long time, unable to accept her absence. He felt his anger rising and Kyuubi moving in the seal when he finally awoke from his disbelief. His shout of anger was so powerful that it shook the ground beneath him and reverberated from the tips of his toes up. Naruto's eyes bled and burned. Pain had said the Rinnegan in a barely audible voice, and he had seen the widening of his dead eyes. He might have paused to consider what that meant if he hadn't been so consumed by his anger. He would have learned that he had unlocked the Rinnegan, the Namikaze's legacy. He gave Pain his all, shredding him from limb to limb, and didn't give a damn if the man was under control. One of the few individuals who truly knew him, Anko, was there to console him and support him. She was the one he killed. Pain was a scarcely distinguishable ball of flesh and blood scattered across the floor when he was done. He had scampered to Anko's body, grabbed her, and then sobbed uncontrollably. After sensing his anger, Hinata hurried to him after her battle. As soon as she realized what had happened, she snatched Naruto from behind and held him firmly while he clutched Anko. Compared to Sakura, Lee struggled harder against Sasori. Her antidote to his poison was limited in its effectiveness, and she had little of it. It was simpler because Sakura had already fought him, but she was unable to win using the same strategies, and Lee was a close combat user like her. Sasori was a long-range user in both of those things, so he had the advantage. Sakura ran toward Lee as he fainted after becoming poisoned. Sasori rushed in for the kill, but Sakura held him. Sakura refused to run despite Lee's entreaties because she couldn't risk losing anybody else. They prepared for death, but it never materialized. They turned to see why Itachi was standing in front of them, and Sasori was staring at the man with wide eyes before turning to face his ruined puppets. Itachi effortlessly defeated Sasori without even scratching him as the two watched. After cleaning his hands of blood, Itachi approached them, crouched down, tossed Lee over his shoulder, and proceeded to the camp. Itachi admitted that he was a spy for Jiraiya and had never been a true member of the Akatsuki after the Akatsuki were routed, with significant losses being suffered by the United Nations. He explained to them why he killed his kin and expressed disappointment that Sasuke wouldn't end up like his former relatives. Even if he died again, he wanted to be with them and help put an end to this lunacy once and for all. He was accepted right away. Tsurumi Mei, a stunning Mizukage, had taken notice of Naruto after he was named one of the war's acting leaders. She had observed that Naruto had spent time with the bloodthirsty woman Anko and the lovely beauty Hinata. Curious about the boy with the blonde whiskers, she once confronted him while Hinata was present. When she started speaking with him, she was struck by his gentle yet firm demeanor and became drawn to it. When he resisted her charms, the same charms that had all others bowing before her feet, she became even more intrigued. Naruto was never seen without Mei or Hinata by his side after that. Killer Bee's students, Samui, Karui, and Omoi, together with their team leader, challenged him one day. They were curious about Bee's final moments. Knowing what it would be like to be unaware of the specifics of Kakashi's death, Naruto told them even though he didn't want to. He began speaking to Samui in an attempt to lift her spirits while they wept and mourned. He could see she was hurt, even if she did a great job of hiding it. Seldom did Samui leave his side. At last, Madara showed up. Madara's gaze were fixed on Naruto, indicating who he intended to fight, while several ninja foolishly charged in and perished instantly. That's exactly what Naruto did, telling everyone to back off while he used Sage Mode and his bloodline. Before attacking, the minuets waited there assessing one another. With that smug grin on his face, Sasuke had shown up beside the battle. He had assured the girls that he would save the attractive and powerful ladies because Madara and he would both require heirs when he became king. Naruto would have erupted in righteous rage if he had had more time to digest what he had heard, but he was preoccupied with the Uchiha founder. Sakura, Kiba, Ino, a few Kyumo and Kirinin, and then Tsunade surrounded Sasuke. They also engaged in combat, making every effort to cope with the unexplained tremors that shook the earth beneath them. The Kyumo-nin, Kirinin, Kiba, and Ino were the first two to come under Sasuke's control. Together, Sakura and Tsunade gave the last Uchiha their best effort before they were worn out. Something struck Sasuke from behind just as he was ready to kill them. When Lee noticed Sakura was in danger, he had kicked Sasuke on the back of the head, even though he was still not fully recovered from the poison. As they waited for Sasuke's body to move, the three gazed at it. They declared him unconscious when it didn't. As he was put to death, Sakura turned aside. They discovered that Naruto and Madara were responsible for the earth's tremors when they reflected on their struggle. While Naruto and Madara jumped on each bijou and fought with everything they had, Gamabunta and his fully grown offspring were out fighting the bijou mercilessly. The others could only watch, hoping Naruto would prevail, because the battle was so intense. Naruto attempted to take the bijou out of control throughout the battle, something that Pain was briefly successful in doing. In the hopes that his words might save them, he repeated what Kyubi had whispered into his ear. Unfortunately, Madara continued to maintain a firm grip over the bijou. Then Kyubi made a suggestion. Naruto understood that it was the only option, even though it was in a sense suicide. He swiftly drew two seals and used a burst of Kyubi's chakra to knock Madara back. As he began to chant and create hand seals, he clasped the other one between his fingers and placed the first one over Kyuubi's seal. When Madara saw what Naruto was doing, she charged after him. Madara let out a loud curse when Naruto opened his slitted Rinnegan eyes and spoke two words just a foot away. Shiki Fujin. A huge surge of strength shot out of Naruto's body, driving Madara back as the world momentarily came to a halt. He didn't need the Shinigami because he had the Rinnegan. The corpses of the Bijou began to be drawn into the seal. Naruto could hardly hear his friends and allies calling his name and urging him to halt above the demon's raucous, enraged roars. Naruto fell onto his back and began to breathe deeply when they were all dragged in. With a look of unadulterated rage on his face, Madara got to his feet and gave Naruto his best glare before attacking. But he didn't believe the boy would be protected by the sand. Naruto let out a gasp at seeing this. To demonstrate that the man hadn't done it, he turned to face the astonished Gaara who was standing with the other individuals. The Ichibi were the only other entity capable of controlling sand in that way. Even demons, he surmised, were grateful to their saviors. He attacked Madara with all of his might, power coursing through his veins. Naruto had the Bijou on his side this time, not Madara. After that, it happened quickly, and Naruto totally crushed him to ensure he wouldn't come back anytime soon. And then he fell apart. As soon as he woke up in the seal, he proceeded to look for Kyuubi and see how the other Bijou was doing. But instead of 9 demons, he discovered the Jubi, a single one with 10 tails. Bringing them all together appeared to have reunited them into the original entity that had been divided all those years before by the Sage of Six Paths. After giving Naruto a menacing look, the demon thanked the youngster haughtily. The demon had claimed that he would create a Bijou with unrivaled strength while merely being in Naruto's mind like a conscience because he would never be able to escape his seal. Naruto flatly rejected, detesting the notion. But all the Jubi could do was laugh and tell him he had no other option. Following that, Naruto experienced anguish as the Jubi's power surged through his body and blended with his own skills. His ears moved up his head and changed shape, and he felt 20 tails grow from his torso. He sensed teeth and claws growing. The ache eventually subsided. Before he heard the terrible words of the Jubi, he had been panting on the floor of his mindscape. "It's not enough, you need more power." Again he was overcome by pain. But dread was not the only emotion that gripped him. He no longer sensed Tsunade's presence or that of some of the other ninja he had previously sensed, but if the tales he was receiving were any indication, he continued to gain strength. Then he felt Sakura's presence vanish too, and it hit him. To increase his dominance, the Jubi was robbing them of their lives, vitality, and strength. He had cried out for the Bijou to stop laughing and to spare them. But all the devil did was smirk. He whispered, "More power," repeatedly. He felt Hinata, Mei, and Samui go as well, and tears streamed down his face. Hoping that Kami would just murder him so the rest would live, he called out to the heavens. Even though he felt alone on the battlefield at last, the power continued to flow. Everybody in the elemental nations was being killed by the Jubi. He eventually reached 100 tails, at which point the anguish stopped. He was sobbing on the ground and pleading with Kami to kill him in return for bringing the nations back to life. When he beheld a fully contented Jubi and heard his remarks, he was flung from his mindscape. "See you soon, little Hyakubi no Ukami." And now here he was, staring at the bodies that littered the ground with a sense of helplessness, tears streaming down his cheeks, 100 wolf tails flowing behind him, and wolf ears flat against his head. They were all dead. He could never leave his house, but he could always leave the nations and travel to where people without chakra live. He fell to the ground, sobbing uncontrollably for his buddies and for his own demise. The sensation of arms encircling him made him stiffen. "It's all right, Naruto. I've got you." His eyes widened at the sound. His tears grew when he turned and beheld a transparent feminine figure. But he muttered, "Hinata? A mission to the world of the living?" "Yes, to Karakura town." As he sipped his tea, Matsumoto Rangiku blinked and gazed at her white-haired Taicho. "Karakura town?" he asked. "Why?" A relatively large hollow appeared and easily injured the one stationed there. He escaped, but the hollow is still wandering around. It was decided that a Fukateku would be the one to deal with the problem until the station Shinigami is healed. "I volunteered you." She stuck out her bottom lip and whined, hoping to get him to reconsider. But why, Taicho?" she asked. The tiny boy seemed unfazed by the display as usual. His hand gripped his teacup more tightly. "You haven't done your paperwork in a month," he said. Hitsugaya Toshiro took another sip of his tea to try to calm himself before saying, "You've been hiding sake in my desk, you threw a party in my office and forged the Suteichu's signature and caused me to think we were in an emergency situation while you just laughed in the background. And you ask why I volunteered you. I need a vacation from you." "Ah, Taicho, you're so mean," she yelled as she rushed toward him. "Please have another Fukateku do it. According to Toshiro, I cannot. It's already been decided and confirmed. You're leaving at 6 tonight." "6? Taicho, I won't have time to prepare, I dash." She jumped as Toshiro yelled, "This isn't a pleasure trip, Matsumoto," and slammed his cup into the desk in front of him. "There's a dangerous hollow that has injured one of our own, from my division as well. I'm taking responsibility and sending you, and you will take this job seriously. Do you understand?" Her shoulders slumped in defeat, and her pout grew. With a grudging nod, she fell back onto the couch behind her. "I understand, Taicho." After giving her a nod of approval, he squeezed the bridge of his nose. He sensed the beginning of another headache brought on by Matsumoto. "Good. Now go prepare. Unlike someone, I take my work seriously. Hold for a second." Matsumoto's eyes became wide as she had an idea. "This assignment will save me from having to complete any paperwork." A broad smile spread across her face. "Indeed. Don't even think about it, Matsumoto." How'd you know, Taicho?" His forehead developed a tick mark. "How long have I served as your superior?" "I know you well, Matsumoto, and there's no way you're getting out of paperwork. When you return you're going to finish it or I'll cut your funds for a while." At that, her face twisted in terror as she gasped. But Taicho, I won't be able to go shopping if I don't have any money." "Then it'll be a lesson for you to learn about work. You don't get paid for doing nothing, Matsumoto. Earn your paycheck." The idea of not being able to shop and, gulp, not having any money made her eyes go glassy. Life wasn't worth living without them. She glanced at her Taicho, whose expression conveyed to him that he was taking the topic very seriously, but what did she anticipate? Hitsugaya Toshiro was this person, and he was always dependable. "Do you understand, Matsumoto?" "Hi," she greeted, her eyes blazing with resolve at the prospect of losing her cash. She hurried out of the room, shouting, "I'll go get ready to go to the world of the living to shop at all those opulent stores." Wait, did I say that? I meant kill the hollow, then. Matsumoto. As quickly as she could, Matsumoto ran through the gate. She was eager to cross over as quickly as she could. Although she hadn't informed Taicho that, she had the impression that he was aware of it. The sooner she arrived, the sooner she could kill the hollow and go shopping. In what ways does her Taicho perform these actions? When a little bell chimed, she halted her sprint and grabbed her sword. Her eyes narrowed as she glanced around, then began to run once more. She was positive she heard it even though she didn't see anything. Ding! She whirled around and gaped. A big, transparent figure was running in her direction before this. Knowing that anything that might sneak into this place was strong, she gasped and began to run. Unfortunately, because the beast was obstructing her path back to Soul Society, the only place she could reach was the world of the living. It took her a time to notice that the walls were beginning to close in around her. She swore. She had been too slow to communicate. As the walls crushed against the creature, she began to hear it wail. The sight of the exit, which was rapidly becoming covered, filled her with fear. She drew her sword. Glancing back, she saw the thing running at her, its sides torn from its body as it did so. With a cry, she whirled back and sliced the entry while closing her eyes in desperation. The divide became more visible as her cut mark widened. The beast raised a claw as she peered back. And she took the only possible action to avoid it. She dove into the crevice. She sensed that she was plummeting. She was surrounded by darkness before it transformed into a rainbow of every possible hue. She closed her eyes in the hopes that she would be alive wherever she ended up. Then her vision went black as she struck something hard. "What?" exclaimed Hitsugaya Toshiro, listening to Mayuri's report. As the man read the report, the other Takis were all staring at him. "You let an experimental hollow escape into the gate where Matsumoto was." With a hint of rage in his voice, Suteichu Yamamoto remarked, "Calm yourself, Hitsugaya Taishu." Calm myself. My Fukateku is missing because of his carelessness. And he shall be punished." In an attempt to avoid punishment, Mayuri asked, "Why, can't you just find another Fukateku?" "It's not that easy, Mayuri." Hitsugaya yelled, directing all of his resentment at the man. Yukitake stated, "Yes, Matsumoto is not easily replaced." For Toshiro's benefit, Unohana murmured softly, "Remember, she's still alive, Mayuri." "Yes, but she's absent from her duties so she should be replaced." Hitsugaya yelled, "It's your fault that she's absent." Zaraki Kenpachi had to stop him before he could cut the man to ribbons. The white-skinned man spit out, "It's not my fault that your Fukateku was incompetent." Hitsugaya wailed, "What?" as he wriggled in the spiky-haired man's embrace. "How dare you say that about Matsumoto? She's more competent than you'll ever be." Yukitake looked at the little Taicho and murmured, "Calm down, Toshiro." The chamber rang with Yamamoto's words, "Yes, calm yourself." Everybody looked at him. And Mayuri Taishu, stop antagonizing Hitsugaya Taishu. You will be punished for your actions. Mayuri sighed after giving Yamamoto a fierce look. Even he was aware that the Suteichu could not be defeated. He directed his glare toward the boy with the turquoise eyes, who enthusiastically returned the glare with equal fervor. "Now, I want you to direct yourself to figuring out what has happened to our Fukateku. Yamamoto replied. Find her. Mayuri responded, yes sir, and hurried away. The Sutechu added, and you, Hitsugaya Toshiro, need to calm yourself. Hitsugaya adjusted his robes, nodded, and withdrew from Zaraki's hold. I understand. I lost it and I apologize. And you lost it for an understandable reason. Go home and rest. But I need to search for Matsumoto. The Sutechu gave the youngster a grandfatherly glance and said, rest for today, Hitsugaya Taishu, you'll need your strength for the search. We'll find her, but you need to have a level head. Hitsugaya gave a nod, considering the floor variation intriguing. I understand. Matsumoto gasped awake and hurried to see if she was hurt. When she saw that her stomach was bandaged and that she was dressed differently, she arched an eyebrow. She became aware that she was in a silk-lined queen-sized bed at that very time. Bewildered, she leaped to her feet and grabbed for Hiniko. She began to look wildly for it when she didn't feel it, and terror took control. She jumped to the ground and peered beneath the bed. Running to the closet, she took a quick look inside. There were lots of lovely clothes, but no zanpakuto. She slammed the closet door shut after stomping her foot on the floor. Then she complained, "Where are you?" Before her eyes brightened, she turned to face the bed with her arms crossed. Her sword was on the dresser beside it. She walked over to it, scooped it up, and then smashed it in her arms. She hurried to fasten it, but she halted when she realized she was wearing other clothes. She scanned her surroundings before spotting the exact object she was seeking, a mirror. Her eyes widened at what she saw when she approached it. She wore a stunning teal dress that flaunted her enormous cleavage and had side straps that cut up the sides of her legs. It made her flush, but then she grinned. She adored it. She laughed and twirled joyfully, showing off in front of the mirror. She recalled her predicament as she heard a doorknob turn. Unsheathing Hiniko, she aimed the blade at the entrance, braced for battle if necessary. She wasn't going to just toss them in the safe pile, even if they handed her an outfit that was absolutely gorgeous. This might simply be a ruse to encourage her to lower her defenses before they attack. She noticed a silver-haired man entering via the open door, half of his face hidden by a book. When she saw uncontrollably white hair, Matsumoto briefly saw her taicho before hardening once more and frowning as a slight flush appeared on the man's cheeks. He was most likely reading a pornographic text. The man's only visible eye formed an inverted U upon seeing her, and he put an embarrassed hand on the back of his neck. He lowered his book to reveal a mask covering the lower portion of his face. Then she saw the chain fastened to his breast. Was he a soul? Sorry about that. I just got to this simply wonderful part in the story and I just couldn't put it down. How are you? Her eyes narrowed, and she moved her sword. With the intention of consoling the man, she leaped at him. The man's gaze sharpened, and she widened as he quickly grabbed the blade out of her hands and swung her into an arm lock. His eye bent once more as he skillfully swirled the blade around, saying, Ma, let's calm down. Someone could get hurt if you swing this around like that. He let her go and returned the blade. With caution, she grabbed it and leaped backward. She questioned, why haven't you moved on? He blinked. Ah. You know I'm dead. Of course, it's my job to know. I'm a Shinigami, the lieutenant of the 10th Division of the Godai 13, Matsumoto Rangiku. His eyes briefly expanded before contracting once again. "You're a Shinigami." She gave a nod. He began to look her over from head to toe. She could see that the man's analysis wasn't twisted, even though she knew he was most likely a massive pervert based on the way he was reading the book. Time had given it experience and a certain sharpness. He wasn't normal, in her opinion. He took a sidestep. "Come with me. Namikaze-sama would like to speak with you." After giving him a long look, she nodded and walked out the door with caution. She would have to comply with their demands for the time being until she found out where she was. In the world of the living, it was uncommon to hear of a soul strolling around so carelessly. The man had gone back to his book, and she followed him. She was astonished to discover that it was an extremely ancient type of Asian writing when she attempted to peek over his shoulder to see what he was so engrossed in. It was nearly a blend of Japanese and Chinese. Overall, she was frustrated since she was unable to read a single word of it. She said, "So, can you tell me about this place?" They were clearly in a castle or house of some kind. He gave a shoulder shrug. "Not much to tell. How about why a soul like you is simply wandering around not worrying about hollows attacking at any given moment?" She was even more shocked by the man's matter-of-fact response, "Hollows? Never heard of them. If they're supposed to attack souls, then Namikaze-sama's aura is probably what's keeping them away." That was when she felt her mind stop. Was someone's aura strong enough to repel a swarm of hollows? Not possible. Where exactly had she ended up? "Who are you?" "Me. I'm Hitaki Kakashi, nice to meet you." "And who's this Namikaze-sama?" "He's the leader of the spirit nations. He's our king and our guardian. He's simply Namikaze-sama." "I don't get it." With her hands groaning to pry out the man's throat, Matsumoto yelled in frustration. "Spirit nations? Long ago, this place used to be called the Elemental Nations." At that moment, her heart stopped. The nations of elementals. It was not doable. Centuries ago, the elemental nations vanished from the map. When that happened, the Spirit King reportedly lost his temper, feeling both anxious and irritated that an entire island could vanish and that nothing other than naive souls showed up in Soul Society that day. As she saw another person go by, she questioned, "What happened here? What happened?" "Well, I'll give you the quick overview. We all died." "All of you? The whole nations?" He gave a sorrowful nod. "We were in a war at the time and most of us were already killed off by someone named Madara." She gave a nod. Due to his continuous attempts to gain control of the hereafter, that guy was imprisoned deep within Soul Society. When they had had enough, they put him in the lowest prison they had and deprived him of all his skills, rendering him paralyzed from the neck down. Namikaze-sama killed him, but at a price. Everyone died. He still blames himself as he's the only one who didn't die, but he became something much worse. Recalling her own death, she muttered, "What can be worse than dying?" She had been burned alive after being suspected of being a witch. The memory made her shiver, but she forced herself to relax. Seeing the shudder, Kakashi glanced at her out of the corner of his eye before straightening his gaze. He became a demon. Her eyes widened and her steps ceased. A demon? He must have meant a hollow. However, he stated that this Namikaze man could not be a hollow because he did not die. Demons were merely historical fiction meant to frighten Shinigami into practicing and exercising caution near hollow. They couldn't possibly exist. Hoping he was kidding, she glanced at him. Her heart fell as she saw his solemn eyes. Could a demon be handled by the Soul Society? He'd a deity-type demon. He's a guardian, he's a destroyer, he's a god, he's the Hyakubi no Ukami, the 100-tailed wolf. As she began to follow him once more, the name made her skin crawl. Would he be upset with her for entering his territory without authorization? Fear rose within her as he swallowed. She had no desire to confront a demon. A demon? Hollows were awful enough. The idea made her cringe. The two came to a halt at big double doors. Kakashi looked over at her. He may not like the rules of royalty, but we make it a habit to use them around him. Do not speak unless spoken to, address him as Lord, Sir, King, or Sama, keep things short and to the point, and don't make him wait. Are we clear? She swallowed and nodded, preparing to face this evil king. Kakashi laughed as he pushed open the double doors and took a step to the side, saying, "Relax, he doesn't bite often." Well, what do we have here? Matsumoto's first impressions were of burning crimson eyes, teeth, and the throne's ring of tails. The unworldly thing in front of Matsumoto made her flush. Such light and warmth could not come from any hollow. Her gaze swept across his body, from each golden tip of his spiky hair to his muscles designed for speed. His appearance simply could not be mortal, he was unquestionably not a human. With his captivating blue eyes, which she was certain were previously bleeding red, the blonde's lips quirked and he lifted an eyebrow at her wide-open, amused gaze. When she realized she was staring, she turned away, flushed. She was aware that Matsumoto wasn't a shy person, yet the way he gazed at her made her feel embarrassed right away. "So, you're a Shinigami?" he asked in a cool, slightly rusty voice. Inhaling, she reminded herself of her role. Right now, she couldn't allow the monster to entice her. The thought made her want to strike herself. Rangiku is bad. In her mind, she reprimanded. Desiring to be enticed by a demon was like to a soul approaching a hungry hollow directly. It wasn't a smart move. When she saw that the silver-haired man was gone and the doors behind her were locked, she suppressed a squeak and responded, "Yes, I am." With his legs crossed and his eyes examining her, he hummed. "Funny. You're not what I'd pictured." His eyebrow shot upwards as she blinked and then glared. She growled. "What are you implying, Namike-sama?" The mockery in her voice made him smile. "Nothing, my dear, nothing at all. I've met one Shinigami before and he didn't look human. Always had that knife in his mouth, he did." It dawned on her after a second of staring at him. She was aware of the myths. She had heard of the Spirit King, who ruled over all souls and had the ability to seal devils. No, that was not feasible. The Spirit King refused to talk to demons since it was hazardous and nonsensical. The Shinigami that appeared to console the souls of the elemental nations after they all died had to be a rather normal one. Yes, it must have been it. She watched with wide eyes as the tails joined and formed to 10, and she jumped a little when the demon arose. He never took his eyes off her. "It seems we have put off introductions. I'm Namike Uzumaki Naruto, the Hyakubi no Ukami. And you are?" "Matsumoto Rangiku." He gave a nod. "Now what, pray tell, are you doing here in the spirit nations, Matsumoto-san?" "It was a mistake. I did not mean to interrupt your daily life." "It's not interrupted at all, Matsumoto-san, I assure you. You're actually the most interesting thing that's happened since that dragon 200 years ago. Seriously, did you know they still exist? He asked in a rhetorical tone. Not very surprised, she nodded. Toshiro Zanpakuto was a dragon, and if a dragon had a spirit, it must have existed at one point. As he glided down the steps in front of his throne, he remarked, "Fun creatures they are. Riding them is a thrill, take it from me. Try it sometime." Now what was this mistake? Must you know? His voice was grave and as keen as a blade as he said, "I'm the ruler of the spirit nations, my dear. It's my job to know. Be it dangerous or not, I must be aware of it. I don't know the details myself. Try your best, Matsumoto-san. What do you remember?" She crossed her arms and glared at him, saying, "Nothing really happened. A creature showed up in the gate started to close, I ripped a hole in it, and here I am. I don't know how it happened." There, happy. Uncertain whether he had actually heard her snap, he gave her an owlish blink before smiling. "That's quite an interesting story you got there, my dear. I'm compelled to call you a liar." She was about to scream at him. She may have steered clear of the topic and refused to listen, but she never lied. But when he raised his hand to silence her, she became aware of his proximity. When they were just a few feet apart, he had halted his descent in her direction. Her cheeks began to flush, but she forced the sensation away. "But I believe you. I can sniff out a lie very easily. You have not lied to me since you entered those doors, so I do not see you as a threat. Relax, my dear, you're a guest in my home. Will you stop calling me my dear? Why do you do that anyway?" He gave a shrug. "No reason not to. Kakashi is waiting outside. He'll guide you back to your room and have a meal prepared for you. As long as you are here, you're not a prisoner but a guest." "Are you really a demon?" she asked, straining to contain her curiosity. Before she could stop herself, it poured out of her mouth. Desperate to strangle herself, her fingers flexed, but she intuitively reasoned that it wouldn't work out. Unable to find her voice, she nodded. Thus, he was a true demon, and there were others. That was not good for Soul Society. Hollows was causing them enough problems enough. They needed no more demon-related problems. She could hear the sorrow in his words. She nearly felt sorry for him because she recalled what she had been told, that he didn't choose to become a monster. "I have a question, Namike-sama. Please, call me Naruto. I prefer it. I don't honorifics with my people or special guests." He grinned. "What would you like to know?" "Two things, actually. Where'd all your tails go?" He laughed. "I should have expected that. It's honestly hard to get around with 100 tails flowing behind me. I suppress my power and therefore the number of tails is reduced. The more I release, the more tails I gain. It's quite simple, really. Next question." She nodded, realizing that she understood. "Why have you renamed the elemental nations the spirit nations? Does it have something to do with that silver-haired soul? He said you all died." His smile faded once more. "Ah, that Kakashi," letting things spew from his mouth again without thinking. "Yes, we all died, my dear. Most of the people couldn't move on, and thus the spirit nations were formed, and they appointed me as their leader, their king. Many of us are much happier than we were in life." She was unable to respond to that. Souls must transfer to the Soul Society or else they will turn into hollows, although the Kakashi figure has been dead for more than a millennium and has not yet displayed any symptoms of the whole developing. People have every right to move on. Why would they have stayed here so long? She was certain that the Soul Society would attempt everything they could without hesitation if they ever smelled this area, and they would eventually learn the truth. How'd they all die? Kakashi-san said you blame yourself. He sighed after flinching slightly. It was my fault in a way. True, Madara did kill many of us, but there were many nations that weren't touched by his tyranny yet. When was still human I had a demon sealed inside of me, the strongest of its time, the Kyubi no Kitsune. Her gaze expanded. She had heard about Kyubi, the worst of the times when the Spirit King would seal devils within people. Before they reached puberty, they would frequently be killed, beaten, mocked, and viewed as demons themselves. According to what she had heard, the Spirit King dreaded sealing the bijou into newborns. After they died, he took their souls and put them in a paradise that is inaccessible to hollows of all levels. When I killed Madara, I had all the demons sealed inside of myself to free them from his control. However, I didn't expect them to combine into their original entity, the Jubi. He knew he would never out of me, so he decided to make me a bijou, the strongest to ever exist. He combined us together, making me the Jubi, but he felt I didn't have enough power. He started to steal the life from all those around me, but it still wasn't enough. He stole it from everyone in the elemental nations, everyone. By the time he was satisfied I was the Hyakubi and everyone was dead. He's but a voice in my head now, but the damage has already been done. Before pushing it down, she felt sympathy well up in the pit of her stomach. Neither sympathy nor pity was anything he needed. She said in a whisper, "I'm sorry. How do you feel now that you know the truth? Do you blame me?" After hearing that narrative, she found her voice weak and muttered, "I don't. I feel sorry for you and the innocents, but I don't blame you. I blame the Jubi though. You're just another innocent that was affected by a demon." He gave her a smile and blinked. He said quietly, "I've never heard it put that way before. I'm a victim. What about you? How did you die?" Naruto gave a nod. He grinned as he slipped into a memory and Rangiku finally noticed his youth. "I've heard of those times. Tragic really. I've met a few witches in my life and I have to tell you I'm fond of them. They're rather beautiful and refined. They're nothing like the wrinkled evil creatures people make them out to be." He didn't appear to be older than 18. She chastised herself for being too distracted to really take a closer look at him. All of this occurred while he was quite little. Even though he was older than she was at the time, he still had a youthful appearance. "Dad!" exclaimed two twin voices. When Matsumoto blinked, two identical boys were suddenly clinging on Naruto. She was struck by how fast they were. They appeared to be approximately 12 or 13 at most, but she couldn't be certain based just on appearances because Naruto was thousands of years old and only had a teenage appearance. They resembled their father in having violet eyes with slit pupils and spiky blonde hair that was cut shorter than Naruto's, which reached his neck. They each had 5 gray fox tails waving behind them, and their heads were ornamented with gray wolf ears. She noticed that they each had fangs adorning their canine teeth as they smiled up at him. He eyed them and reprimanded, "What have I told you two about entering the throne room when I'm in a meeting?" They both sulked together. They all said, "Not to come in." "That's right." He grinned as he glanced up at Matsumoto, who was staring at them in confusion. "Matsumoto-san, meet Nagato and Yahiko, my sons." She gave them a smile. "Hi, I'm Dash." "Dad, who's this old hag?" Naruto suppressed his laughter, huffed, and blinked. Matsumoto's eyes squinted in anger at one of her twins, Yahiko, as a vein in her forehead pulsed. She talked with clenched teeth and a demon smile. "My name is Matsumoto Rangiku." Naruto said with a hint of humor, "Boys, that wasn't very nice." Matsumoto gave him a scowl, which he skillfully ignored. "Apologize." Both of them gazed at her. They said, "Sorry." Their facial expressions and voices conveyed that they felt the exact opposite of what they had said. "Nagato, Yahiko, Matsumoto-chan is our guest." "Matsumoto-chan." She blushed as she thought. She was a chan since when? The blonde demon looked around and said, "Where's your brother? He should be watching you." Their smiles got bigger. Nagato started, "We used the art of stealth dash, to get out of his sight and grasp." "We wanted dash," Yahiko murmured. "To see you." Matsumoto's eyebrows went up. As though they had one thought, they were completing each other's phrases. She was on the verge of squealing but refrained. She was in front of royalty, after all. She would undoubtedly squeal if this were in front of her Taicho. Even in front of the Sutechu, she would do it. She suppressed her inner kid, though, for these were demons and royalty. "There you are," a ranting voice exclaimed. Turning, Matsumoto saw a lad who appeared to be 16 years old marching towards them with unnatural ease, his right eyebrow quivering slightly with repressed anger. She had the opportunity to study him once he stopped a few feet away. His hair, which reached his shoulder blades and was twisted back into a low ponytail, was red, not just red, but red like he had taken a bath in blood. He possessed Naruto's stunning blue eyes with slit pupils. He had 9 tails of the same color and crimson wolf ears. His power was almost overwhelming, even though it was far less than Naruto's. "I turn my back on you annoying monkeys for 1 second and you vanish. And what next? I find you with Dad while he's in a meeting." The blonde screamed. "Kyubi," Naruto murmured calmly, attempting to soothe his angry kid. Not knowing if he was dead or not, Rangiku trailed off, "Kyubi. But I thought he was." But he was undoubtedly still inside Naruto because the Jubi was locked inside him. Kyubi snarled, "Got a problem with my name, lady?" The king turned to his son and emphasized, "Calm down, Kyubi. She's our guest." It was an expected question, Q. The redhead crossed his arms and sighed. "I was their first child, I have red chakra, I have the same personality as his former demon prisoner, and thus I was dubbed, Kyubi. Mortals and their pointless questions." He murmured. For some reason, Matsumoto felt that she should be insulted, but she was unable to find it in herself. Shaking his head at his son's antics with her, Naruto remarked, "Kyubi and I got close during the war. That's probably another reason why the Jubi felt compelled to give me power. Kyubi always wanted me to become a demon, whether it was to escape or another reason I'll never know now. However, I wanted something to remember him by, and then this charming young pup was born and was so much like my former prisoner in power, looks, and personality. Kyubi was the perfect name for him." Kyubi smiled with his fangs and replied, "Doesn't bother me." He waggled his tails elegantly and exaggeratedly to accentuate his statement, "I like being named after such an admirable and powerful demon." I may be only half demon and a wolf, not a fox, but I'm equal to him in power. The tales prove it. He raised a red eyebrow as she rolled her eyes and huffed. Don't get ahead of yourself, brat. There's still someone who can seal you away if you get arrogant. He's my boss. Kyubi blinked, then laughed and put up his hands in submission. I understand. Don't mess with the fiery hag. She snarled and carefully reached for her sword, saying, Lady was bad enough, but if one more person calls me a old hag again, there will be blood. She truly wanted to harm Kyubi, but she wasn't sure it was a smart idea when his mighty father was looking on. Naruto laughed and flashed his razor-sharp teeth in a broad smile. I like you, Matsumoto-chan. Stay as long as you like. After blushing at his statement, she shook her head. I can't stay. Despite how uncaring my Taicho acts, I know he's really worried right now. Besides, I left my sake stash in his desk, and if he finds it before I get back, then I'll be in a lot of trouble. Naruto chuckled. He signaled the silver-haired man's departure and then cried out, Sake, huh? Well, we'll work on getting you back, but until then, Kakashi. Get Matsumoto-chan some sake. A poof sound was heard. How much sake are we talking about? The king grinned broadly. More than you can ever drink. But Dad. You said that you'd take us into town and help us buy birthday gifts for our mothers. Before she recalled the final detail, Matsumoto grinned at them, excited about shopping. She said, mainly to herself, mothers. She put a palm over her mouth when she realized she had uttered it aloud. Uninterested, Kyubi pulled some dirt out from under his nails and answered, yes, mothers. As in plural. So, you're not born from the same mother? Yahiko gave a headshake. Kyubi's mother isn't ours. We have the same dad though. Nagato held out 4 clawed fingers and added, we have 4 mothers. Yahiko and my mother is Enko, Kyubi's mother is Mei, Chrono and Yuki's mother is Hinata, and Ai's is Samui. In other words, Dad has a harem with girls he loves and 2 dweebs over there, and I am half-brothers. Kyubi replied. Stop that. Naruto glared at his kids, flushed. And don't name-call your little brothers, Q. The wolf with 9 tails shrugged. Whatever. Chrono, Yuki, Ai. Matsumoto inquired, unsure of the identities of those individuals. The interpretation from Kyubi was, our half-siblings. So, you have a harem? Naruto smiled blissfully and answered, yes, I do, but it's more of a large family than anything else. The kids love their moms and are happy, we're all happy. Abruptly, with armfuls of sake and a smirk on his face, Kakashi entered the room. Yo! Naruto cheered, good job, Kakashi. The twins said, yes, good job Kakashi, as they reached for the sake, but their father grabbed them by the wolf ear and dragged them away. You're not having that. But we're way old enough to drink it by mortal laws. But you aren't mortal, you're demons, and you're still far from passing the demon restriction. Yahiko grumbled, but Kyubi and Chrono can. They're old enough. Nagato yelled, it's not fair, and grabbed the sake. Just one sip. The king shook his head, saying, no. Kakashi, do me a favor and bring them to their mother. As he set down the sake, Kakashi's eyes lit up once more. He clung on their shirt collars and said, of course. He said, bye, and disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Naruto turned away from the glittering Matsumoto, who was ogling the drinks as though they were gods, and said, "Care to join us, Kyubi?" Kyubi gave a headshake. He looked at Matsumoto and then back at his father, grinned, spun on his heel, and left, saying, "I'd love to, but Mom has something to speak to me about. I might join you later. How much can I have?" "All of it." "Please say yes." "No." She pouted and complained. "Why not?" He smiled. "Because I'm having some." As her two children materialized in front of her and were dropped by Kakashi, who waved before vanishing, Anko blinked. Her bewildered gaze was echoed by Samui, Yuki, Chrono, and AI, who were joining her for tea and sake, but they gave her no explanation for what had just transpired. When the twins noticed the room staring at them, they winced. Samui gazed at them blankly while Anko's eyes narrowed, nearly glaring. Chrono, a boy who appeared to be 14 years old, had purple-black hair, slit violet eyes, black wolf ears, and 7 black tails. He was looking at them with a bored, almost indifferent, yet amused expression, as though he knew they would be beaten by their mother. Yuki, a girl who appeared to be 12 years old, with lavender eyes, black hair, silver wolf ears, and 5 silver tails. She looked at him bewildered, her head cocked to the side like an inquisitive animal. She did, however, smile like her brother, knowingly. The only one who appeared to be totally lost at the moment was AI, a girl of about 8 years old with blonde hair, brown eyes, and brown wolf ears with 2 tails. Her ears were twitching occasionally as she tried to make sense of the situation, and her eyes were narrowed in uncertainty. Together, the two exclaimed, "Hey Mom," and comforted one another by holding hands because they understood what was about to happen. She narrowed her eyes and said, "Why in Kami's name were you dropped off here by Kakashi of all people?" Yahiko started to say, "Well, we went to see Dad and Dash," but was cut off when a kunai charged at his head. He ducked behind his twin, who was trembling just as much. Their mother gave them a fierce look. "I've told you time and time again that you are not to disturb your father while he's in a meeting. It could have been important. When he's in the throne room you don't go in unless you're called or it's an emergency." Stuttering, "Sorry," Nagato said. After saying, "D-Dad just promised to take us into town and Dash," he had to avoid a kunai. "I don't care about your reasoning." Samui drank some tea and remarked, "Clam yourself, Anko." She growled, "Easier said than done." She glanced at AI before turning to face Chrono and Yuki. "Your child knows not to disturb Naruto when he's in there and she's younger than the twins," she said. "Hinata's are the same." Chrono gave a snort. "Not our fault your children are incompetent." "Hey." She squinted at him and said, "I wasn't blaming you personally, Chrono. Not that you're a good role model either." He gave her a scowl. "You're not exactly Mother of the Year either, Anko." She said, "How come you're nice to everyone but me?" He gave her a smile. "Because you're fun to mess with, Mom." As Chrono smiled triumphantly, having won this round, she crossed her arms, whispered something inaudible under her breath, and pouted. Yuki motioned for them to go on. "You were saying?" Yahiko glanced at his twin and asked, "Well, that woman, what was her name?" Nagato thought, rubbing his chin thoughtfully, "Matsumoto I believe. Matsumoto wanted sake so father sent Kakashi to get it. We wanted it too so we tried to get some, after all, we're half human and have already passed the human age requirements." Dad, however, saw it differently and had Kakashi drop us off here. Nagato said. Anko smiled mischievously and asked, so, was she pretty? Both of them smiled. Together, they exclaimed, she has the largest bust I've ever seen, larger than Tsunade-bachan's. Not pleased that her brothers had brought up the subject first, Yuki questioned, what else besides bust? AI hopped in her chair and asked, is she thin? What's she like? Who is she? Is her hair long? What color? What's her eye color? The twins exchanged glances, smiled, and turned back to her. Yes dash, strawberry blonde dash, stormy gray dash, yes, hyper and unique dash. As they jointly gave the last response, the twins' smiles widened. She's a Shinigami. Knowing that this would only result in disaster, Samui simply blinked before letting out a sigh, while Anko's mouth fell open a little. As she skipped along the hallways, Matsumoto flashed a joyful, inebriated smile. She was the finest at holding her liquor in Seoul society, and King tied her in a drinking competition, proving that he truly knew how to drink. She was at last up against someone who didn't despise her based solely on her gender. She thought it was fantastic. When she realized she had no idea where she was or how to return to her room, she paused and looked about. She had departed too hastily and without requesting a return. There were no indications to guide her, and Kakashi was not present to lead her. She was really disoriented. Her shoulders slumped as she pouted. How did she find herself in similar predicaments every time? Huffing at herself, she turned a corner and fell backward after colliding with something hard. She moaned, "Ow," and looked up to find another woman, perhaps 18 years old, on the ground. She had purple pupilless eyes and gorgeous long black hair. Even if her chest was smaller than hers, it was nonetheless remarkable for a typical lady. From the sense she got, she was unquestionably a soul, and a strong one at that. Her lack of a chain, however, greatly piqued Matsumoto's interest. The only souls without chains are those who have passed on or passed through Kanso. Clearly, though, she hasn't done either. The woman raised her head. "Ah. Sorry," she said in a quiet voice that was powerful and lovely. "Are you all right?" "Yeah, I'm fine," she exclaimed with a smile and a leap. "A little fall like that's nothing." Grinning, the girl with the raven hair got to her feet. "I'm glad. I'm Namike Uzumaki Hinata." "Ah, so you're one of the four mothers?" After blinking, Hinata grinned once more. "You must be our guest. You gave Naruto-kun quite a scare there. You appeared in our bedroom out of nowhere in the middle of the night. You startled him awake while the rest of us awoke to his startled cry." She chuckled at the recollection. Matsumoto flushed more. Sorry about that, it was an accident that led to that event." She gave a headshake. "No need to apologize. Are you lost? You're headed towards the spa." "The spa?" "Yes. Where exactly is the spa?" After giggling once again, Hinata gestured behind her. "At the end of the hallway, it is the door at the end. You can't miss it." She let out a squeal. "Spa, here I come," she exclaimed as she hurried down the corridor. "What?" Kyubi questioned, his eyes wide as he looked at his mother, Mei, in disbelief. She bounced on the balls of her shoes and smiled, "You heard me. Isn't it wonderful?" He shook his head and blinked away the astonishment as he continued, "Yes, I'm just surprised. I didn't expect this from anyone for a while. It's very hard for this to happen to a soul after all. Yet he couldn't get the wow emotion out of his head. What do you think Naruto-kun will do when he hears about this? Dad? He'll be shocked and smile at the same time. His brain will fight between the two and he'll end up doing both. Hey, be nicer to your father. He helped make you. QB gave a shrug. He doesn't mind. Of course he doesn't. Your father's too nice to you sometimes. QB gave her another shrug and then grinned. Do you want me to go with you? She smiled at her son and pulled him to the door by holding his hand. I wouldn't have it any other way. Gazing down at the stack of papers on his desk, Toshiro let out a sigh. Since Matsumoto never completed hers without him tying her up and holding her sake bottles as ransom, and after a terrible amount of whining, he was accustomed to the extra work. He missed that hyper-fukateku of his all the time. But his concern was another matter. Her disappearance greatly irritated him. He won't reveal the methods of Mayuri's punishment should he recoil, but it didn't make her return. Typically, a missing Shinigami hunt would not be as extensive and protracted as this one. But it was inside the gate that she vanished. She tore a hole through it and left alive, and they can't locate her anywhere, even though people have died in it. That simply made him more anxious. She seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Her signature was nowhere to be found, and even the experimental hollow they were able to recapture, albeit in fragments, was unable to provide them with any information regarding her peculiar disappearance. For the time being, Kuchiki Rukia had replaced her in Karakura town. Although she was a competent Shinigami, she lacked Matsumoto's crucial experience. Since the hollow it had previously slain was at her skill level, he hoped she had what it took to eliminate that one. With another sigh, he squeezed the bridge of his nose. The situation didn't appear promising. Yukitake entered his office as the door opened. He grinned and reached into his sleeve, saying, "Hi, Hitsugaya Taishu. I brought sweets." He lied through his teeth, but Yukitake still pouted and bought the act, saying, "And no, that's okay, I've already had some today." "Too bad, I was sure you'd enjoy what I got you today." Toshiro laced his fingers together and asked, "No, it's fine. Anyway, why are you here, Yukitake Taishu? I doubt you'd make the journey to my office just to offer me candy." Yukitake nodded, abruptly losing all sense of humor. "Correct. We've lost contact with Kuchiki Rukia an hour ago." Toshiro sighed once again after glancing at his fellow white-haired captain. "Is she dead?" He attracted the attention of the smaller captain by saying, "No. She's very much alive, but her signature has lessened and another signature, much larger than hers ever was, appeared near her when he lost contact." Toshiro's gaze grew strained. "Did she do what I think she did?" He gave a shrug. "It's currently unknown, though we do have our suspicions. It's being investigated as we speak." "And Matsumoto?" "No lead so far." Hitsugaya sighed. "I doubt Mayuri is doing anything anyways." "Oh, on the contrary, he's working very hard. Not only is the Sutechu breathing down his neck about this, but he's finding himself curious about what happened to her and where she disappeared to. I haven't seen him this motivated in a long time. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" "It's both." Leaning back in his chair and tapping his finger on his desk in frustration, Toshiro shook his head. "Nothing about this makes sense." "I didn't say I did." No one has ever done what she did in the gate before, so we have nothing to go on. We'll find her Hitsugaya Taishu, but it'll take time. I trust you're right then, as you've never steered me wrong before. Don't make my trust waver, Yukitake Taishu. Yukitake grinned. Never. When Hinata entered the throne room, she saw Naruto slouching on his throne, staring at a glass of sake and twirling it in his palm. He was clearly lost in contemplation because his eyes were half-lidded and glazed over. Sitting on one of the 4 smaller thrones that surrounded his enormous one, 2 on each side, she approached him with a smile. He looked up at her and grinned as she put a hand on his free one. He leaned forward and kissed his wife tenderly, saying, "Hinata-chan. Hello Naruto-kun. I just ran into our guest in the hallway." He arched an eyebrow in amusement. "You did? What did you think of her?" She laughed. "She's hyper, I have to give her that. She's very outgoing and unique, though she did have the feeling of death surrounding her, like us. She's a Shinigami." Hinata's gaze expanded. "A Shinigami? She certainly doesn't look like that one that visits you from time to time." He leaned back thoughtfully and stated, "He's her boss, the Big Daddy Shinigami. They're his subordinates. Perhaps he could return her the next time he visits. I would rather not send one of my people out and risk them being taken." But she asked, "When will he visit again though?" "His timing is never the same. It's always when he's bored. One time there was a 100-year gap before he visited again." With a sigh, Naruto nodded in agreement. That guy did have a tendency to show up at the worst possible times and at random. "Yeah, but I have to do something." "She can't stay here." "Why not?" Naruto opened his mouth and then closed it again as he blinked. After gathering his thoughts for a few minutes, he eventually asked, "What do you mean? Why can't she stay?" "There's no reason to leave, is there? She's a Shinigami, Hinata-chan. She's a danger to our people. She could try to have them pass on, and I can't have that, as no one wants to pass on. She wants to go home and I have no reason to deny her that. She knows about us. She could tell. She will tell." His teeth sharpened to a point in his rage, and his eye hardened as he snarled at the air. "Then let them come. They won't touch anyone and get away with it. If they even suggest it, then there'll be a bloodbath like none other recorded in history." Squeezing his hand, she grinned. "That woman, I told you what I thought about her, but what do you think about her?" He said, "Me," and she nodded. He grinned. "I find her quite intriguing." A bell-like voice called out, "Naruto." The king turned to see Kyubi smiling at him while clutching his mother's hand. "Yes, my love. Did something good happen?" She grinned broadly. "Yes, Naruto-kun, something very wonderful is happening." He said, "What is it?" But Hinata shrieked as soon as she saw it. She inquired joyfully, "Is it true?" and Mei nodded. With a leap off her throne, she embraced the woman. "How wonderful! Okay, what's so wonderful that everyone but me has noticed?" "Naruto," Mei said, her smile almost bursting with joy. "I'm pregnant." His eyes grew wide, and a broad smile slowly appeared on his lips. Wearing a comfortable bathrobe she had purchased at the spa, Matsumoto strolled around the castle hallways wearing a big smile. She felt rejuvenated and at peace, more at ease than she had ever experienced. The hot springs in the Soul Society were nothing short of a miracle. Perhaps she would remain here a little while longer than she had anticipated. After all, the king was amazing visual candy, and it was a respite from all that paperwork. The cherry on top was the fact that he was an excellent drinker. "You seem happy, kitten," she asked. "Hey Nico. Where have you been?" "Asleep." "Do you think tearing a hole in the gate only took energy from you?" "It took more out of me than it did you." Matsumoto crossed her arms and sighed as she walked, concentrating on her talk with her Zanpakuto and not really paying attention to where she was going. "Well, don't blame me. Would you rather have had us get eaten by that thing?" "I don't think so. You could have, however, found a different way to save us than tearing a hole in the fabric of time and space." Ranjiku's brow furrowed as she blinked. Tearing a hole in the fabric of time and space. Hey Nico let out a grunt. "Listen, this place is protected by a barrier so strong you have to tear a hole in time and space to be able to cross it. This demon that you met is simply that powerful, and I'm surprised that you were able to do such a feat. I don't think the Sutechu could even do what you did. Even if I'm quite angry with you, I do have to say I'm impressed." At that, Matsumoto grinned. "Thanks Hey Nico. Don't get used to it. I know a fluke when I see it, and what you did was a complete fluke. Simply dumb luck." With a frown, the Shinigami's eyes narrowed dangerously. "I wonder what would happen if I submerged you in mud for a few days." Hey Nico let out a gasp. "You wouldn't dare," she said in a horrified tone. Her scowl turned to a smug expression. "Oh, I more than dare." Hey Nico complained about something, most likely an insult, but everyone fell silent, causing Matsumoto to smile broadly in satisfaction. "What's go you so happy, Matsumoto-chan?" She let out a cry. She jumped and spun around, her hand over her heart, staring at her disturber. "Naruto," she exclaimed, startled. "You startled me." He rubbed the back of his neck and smiled sheepishly. "Sorry about that. However, your faces changed so much in a few minutes I just had to ask why." She turned red. "Ah, Hey Nico and I were having an argument." "Hey Nico." She showed the Demon King her sword by reaching into her bathrobe and drawing it out. He took it carefully, handled it with skillful care, and looked it over from top to bottom. Then Matsumoto revealed, "That's Hey Nico. She's a sword with a soul. Every Shinigami has one." He smiled, admiring her, and remarked, "Ah yes, I believe the Shinigami I know brought it up once in a while. A beautiful sword she is. You are quite lucky, Matsumoto-chan." She sighed. "Hardly. She's hard-headed, likes to argue with me at all hours, and always insults my intelligence. I sometimes wonder what god I upset for him to give me her of all Zanpakuto. After time I realized it was a goddess, because what goddess wouldn't be jealous of this," she said, showing off her figure. At that, Naruto flushed and turned away from her, failing to notice the smug grin at the response she received. "Here," he said, returning Hey Nico to her. "I do have a reason for looking for you." "Oh." He bowed dapperly and said, "Would you consider joining me for dinner tonight, Matsumoto-chan? Or would you prefer to eat in your quarters?" She turned red. Did he invite her to go out? She would most likely render anyone else comatose if it were anyone else, but she felt compelled to accept for some reason. Sure. I think I'll go." He gave her a smile. "I'll have Kakashi escort you to the dining hall at 6:30. Why always this Kakashi? Naruto nodded to himself, enjoying the description of the silver-haired pervert. He's my every-purpose volunteer. Now, can you tell me why you're heading towards the Knights' changing rooms? She tilted her head slightly to the side and blinked. Was what she heard correct? Knights? Does he still possess them? However, she has yet to witness any technology that even the Soul Society possesses. The what? She inquired inquisitively. You're heading towards the rooms where the knights change into their armor. It's constantly used, so there's not an hour of the day where a knight's not using it. Naruto cracked a cheeky grin. I didn't know you were a peeper, Matsumoto-chan. Trying to maintain her dignity after that charge, she sniffed and flushed. I'm not. With a raised eyebrow, he pointed to the double doors nearby and said, then why were you heading straight for it? She was ashamed to acknowledge that she was really on her way to it. She sputtered for a second, then pulled herself together. When I talk to Haniko, I tend to pay attention to her and not my surroundings. She acknowledged. Taicho sighed and told her to straighten his eyebrow after noticing that it had twitched. She was aware that she would be destroyed in combat if she didn't. He gave her a long look before laughing and shaking his head. Well, that's one of the more creative excuses I've heard, but also one of the most likely. Like a furious cat, she snarled, it's not an excuse. It's the truth. He held up his hands. He is aware when he crosses boundaries and goes too far because he has 4 wives. I understand. No need to become an angry kitten. She reddened and stopped imitating the cat. She simply gave the Demon King a hiss. She bowed. Sorry for my behavior. Before calloused yet soft and loving fingers curled around her chin and drew her out of her bow to face him, she heard him groan. He smiled softly and replied, there's no need for that, Matsumoto-chan. Just be yourself. Forget that I'm a king. I want to see the real you, okay? She nodded, her face flushed. That was something she had never heard someone say to her before. If you wish it dash. He gave a headshake. It's your choice on how to treat me, Matsumoto-chan. Treat me like a king if you want, but I don't want you to do something because you feel obligated to do it because a king asked it of you. I want you to do it because Naruto asked you to. Her lips formed a gentle smile. Please, call me Matsumoto. His smile got bigger. Matsumoto. After tasting the name, he realized he might come to like it. Matsumoto it is then. Can you find your room by yourself or do you need help? She sighed. Of course I can find it on my own. However, I swear that these walls move and change direction, so perhaps your presence shall cause them to stop in this cruel joke of theirs. He gave her a long, wide-eyed look before he burst out laughing. Very well, he said, offering her his arm. I shall grace you with my presence then, my lady. She accepted the offered arm and held it close to her as she smiled at him. Good. 2 similar heads with big, mischievous smiles and sparkling eyes peered at the two from behind a corner. Hey, Nagato. Yes, Yahiko. Do you think we're going to get another mom? It's a possibility. But, judging on their natural instincts with this kind of thing, I don't think they'll be able to do it on their own. Their smiles grew as they exchanged glances. They laughed and said, well, it looks like we'll have to get involved for dear old daddy's benefit. In another scene, Enko broke the teacup in her hands because she thought her boys were up to something. Her eyes narrowed. Those two better not be up to something. Chrono asked, since when are they not? She gave him a fierce look. No, I mean they better not be messing with their father and his guest. The youngster, half demon, raises his eyebrows. You actually care? Of course I care. I'm their mother. Besides, if they do annoy her enough she'll report this to her boss. I don't want to bear the shame of having my children sealed inside a baby. Chrono let out a sigh. You really are a loving mother, aren't you? She gave him a frown. Rangiku was in the midst of a crisis. She doubted that even Soul Society as a whole could stop it. Her mind raced and her brow twitched. Was she capable of doing this? She scowled at the enormous closet that was crammed with exquisite gowns. How could they have predicted that she would choose just one? This was a global conundrum, indeed. She glanced at the endless lines of dresses. Maybe, no, that one was too pink. Yes, she liked pink, but the entire dress? Absolutely not. The design of that red and gold one was stunning. Oh. But that green one was just gorgeous. Furthermore, the purple one was undoubtedly striking. Oh. Her curves would be accentuated by the blue one. She fell onto her bed with a sigh. Given that she had just spent the previous hour attempting to choose a dress among the hundreds that were in there, how could Naruto possibly expect her to be ready on time? She mentioned absently that she needed to find out the designer's name. After seeing those outfits, she wasn't sure she could live without them. She moaned and leaped to her feet, prepared to try again. But when she heard a loud tap on the door, her one-track mind was broken. She noticed that she still had an hour until Kakashi arrived as she looked at the clock. She approached the door and opened it, her lips pursed. When she saw it was the twins, she arched an eyebrow. One of them, though she couldn't tell which, was holding a box. Can I help you, she said, glancing at the person holding the suitcase. Nagato? I'm Yahiko, but it's us who are going to help you. He grinned. How? As he and his twin walked into the room, Nagato said, First off, how do you like our dresses? Oh, they're simply lovely. So lovely in fact that I can't, did you say you're? The twins exchanged smiles. They said, consider it a hobby. Yahiko started off by saying, we found that we are pretty good at designing. Nagato concluded, not as good at sewing though. Around half of the dresses in there are our design dash, give or take a few of course. For a minute, she looked at the two, utterly unresponsive. She was shocked and surprised, and her eyes were big. Her mouth opened abruptly, releasing a high-pitched screech, and then she glomped them, crushing them in her magnificent bust such that they were unable to breathe. I think I might love you, she exclaimed, her powerful arms preventing the thrashing boys from moving and oblivious to their air-related predicament. If you were gods I'd worship you. The two collapsed and gasped for air as they finally succeeded in teleporting to the opposite side of the room. They looked at the woman in horror as their blue features gradually began to become red again. It never occurred to them that a bust may choke someone. As she took up the box, the Shinigami appeared to be unaware of this. She lifted the lid off and asked, "What's this?" She gasped when she saw what was inside. "This is..." Both of them smiled. "Our own design, just for you." Her eyes were wide as she gazed at them. "For me?" Yahiko gave a nod. You're the most interesting thing that's happened as of late. We also want to make your stay here comfortable, as well as impress Dad more easily. She turned red. What makes you think I want to impress him? Nagato laughed. Please, it's written all over your face. If you don't believe us look in the mirror. You look like a girl on her first date with her crush. Yahiko laughed. She gave them a fierce look. I do like your dad, just not that way. After exchanging glances, the two shrugged. Fine, sure whatever you say Their smiles grew to unprecedented levels. Mother number 5. Glaring at them, she snatched up a vase from a corner. As the two laughing twins hurried out, she flung it at them, breaking it on the doorframe. Brats. I told you she said. I do not like your father like that. You're not very convincing, Matsumoto. You shut up. She flushed. She looked at the dress and mumbled, I don't like him like that. But this dress is cute. Nagato and Yahiko exchanged glances along the corridor. Looks like we've got our work cut out for us, Nagato. That we do, Yahiko. It's time for Plan B. Both of them gave each other a nod. Hinata Okayasen. We need your help. With his head in his hands, Naruto took a seat at the head of the big dinner table. His wife were supposed to be present, but Hinata claimed to remember something crucial and pulled them all away, leaving Matsumoto and him alone. He questioned why they were skipping dinner because it was so crucial. Samui, Mei, and Enko appeared sufficiently perplexed. Perhaps it was buying for the new baby. Women seemed to prioritize shopping over all other things. While he was thinking about this, Kakashi entered the room with a lecherous expression on his face. In addition, Naruto saw that the man was not reading his obscene book, which startled and alarmed him somewhat. Unless he is engaged in combat, he will never stop reading the book. The silver-haired man only smiled, and he raised an eyebrow at him. He stepped back from the big doors and bowed, saying, presenting Lady Matsumoto Rangiku. Matsumoto understood why Kakashi wasn't reading the book as soon as he entered those doors. Fire itself was embodied in the clothing. Until the elbow, when the fabric stretched and swelled until it was 1.5 feet long, the sleeves were shoulderless, unattached to the dress, and skin-tight. The fabric faded from a flaming red to orange and then to cold gold. Golden bracelets with a ruby crystal blossom in the center held them on her arms. She flaunted her assets in the main dress, which was sleeveless, deep crimson, and had a low V-neck with tiny silk flowers encircling the tip. Until it reached her hips, where golden beads were carelessly draped around her waist, it clung securely to her body. The red, which was outlined with the same flowers as the chest area, flowed farther down the left and out past the hips till it stopped. An orange, devoid of the blossoms, protruded from beneath it, doing the same thing as the red above it, reaching just above her knees. At last, a golden hue emerged from beneath it and gathered on the ground. She wore a solid gold choker necklace with a big red ruby hanging in the middle. She had a crimson crystal flower in her loose hair and golden hoops for earrings. Naruto was so shocked that his mouth fell open. Matsumoto smiled broadly. Like what you see, Naruto. The king swallowed and nodded while glancing at Kakashi, who swiftly fled after catching the hint. He got up and pointed to the chair beside him. She swooped gracefully over to him, grinning at his startled reaction. When she sat down, he pushed the chair back in after pulling it out. As Naruto took a seat, Matsumoto praised him, saying, "What a gentleman. Ah, I wish men in Seoul society were more like you." "Sure, my Taicho can be quite the gentleman at times, but he's always yelling at me." Curious about this afterlife, Naruto inquired, "What's your captain like?" The mention of him made her smile. "Oh, I like my Taicho very much. His name is Hitsugaya Toshiro and he has white hair that puts Kakashi's to shame and teal eyes. Unfortunately, he died young, around 12, and he was still short for his age, so he's rather sensitive about that." Naruto gave a nod. "The curse of those that die. It's the fact that you don't age that's one of the worst parts of death. Life is always changing but the dead no longer. Being a demon there's little changes as well. When you think about it it's quite depressing. Things that don't change are oh so boring." He breathed a sigh of relief. "Sorry, please continue." She grinned in agreement and nodded. Seldom do the dead change. On many aspects, Seoul society was still mired in the past. She has repeatedly seen how the living world has changed despite maintaining the same routine and customs from the previous few hundred years. Well, Taicho has a colder demeanor than most, but he's very caring. Except when it comes to paperwork or work in general, then he's a slave driver. She sighed. But he's a good man. He died freezing to death, a way just as horrible as getting burned. His Zanpakuto is a powerful ice dragon called Hyorinmaru. He's younger than me even by death days, yet he's much more powerful than me. He's a prodigy." He grinned. "You seem to think very highly of this Toshiro." She gave a nod. "I do. I respect him more than anyone else in Seoul society, that's why I listen to him, on occasion." She replied indifferently. "Anyway, your twins have a wonderful fashion sense." He blinked, then smiled knowingly. "Ah, they designed that didn't they?" She gave a nod. "Yep. When I get back I do hope they'll send me more." He scowled. "You know," he said, trying to get her focus. "You don't have to go back." She gave him a startled expression. "What dash?" He clarified his meaning by adding, "You can stay here." She gave a sorrowful smile. "As much as I'd love to, I have duties. I can't just leave them. I'm a Shinigami to the end and I shall be to the end of my days." He gave a nod. "Very admirable. However, my offer still stands. I feel like I can trust you. Anytime you change your mind just tell me. The spirit nations will welcome you in open arms." "Thanks, but I'm pretty sure I won't change my mind. My heart is set on being a Shinigami." "You never know," he added in a cryptic manner. "The spirit nations have a way of changing the hearts of others." She raised her eyebrows. "What do you dash?" "Ah, the food is here." She turned, her mouth watering at the sight of all the glittering works of art coming their way. When she noticed two servants bringing in wine and sake, her happiness increased. "Matsumoto." "Yes." Her heart skipped a beat when he gave her a nice grin. "Help yourself to whatever and how much you want." 4 people peeked in from outside the room. As they observed what was happening, Enko, Hinata, Mei, and Samui were all grinning. But Nagato and Yahiko were shackled in a corner, their lips pursed in pouts. They questioned, "Why are we tied up?" Their mother yelled, "Because you're trying to interfere with the affairs of the heart. But now you're going to interfere." Enko responded nonchalantly, You started it, so there's nothing wrong with me finishing it. Mei stated, I need to meet his woman. I have a feeling I'm going to like her. Hinata gave a nod. I ran into her, and from the few words we exchanged I already like her. Samui looked at the two and said, why were you trying to get the two together again? Their pouts vanished, and they smiled instead. We like her dash, and we were bored. The two said with joy, Operation Beauty and the Handsome Beast is a success so far. Anko let out a sigh and shook her head, embarrassed by what her kids had done. Glaring at Mayuri across the room, Hitsugaya yelled, what do you mean you don't know? A captain's meeting had been called once more, this time to discuss the circumstances surrounding Matsumoto Rangiku's disappearance. Mayuri huffed and looked at the little Taicho. Like I said, we haven't picked up her signature anywhere, and I cannot fathom what happened in the gate. There's no trail, nothing. The only thing I can think of is if she tore a hole in the fabric of time and space, and we all know that that's impossible, so as a result I don't know where she is. Track her. It's not that hard. You're a fool, Hitsugaya Taishu. You can't track something if there's nothing to track. Aizen gently stated, calm down, to Shirokuen. And you, Mayuri Taishu, I honestly don't think you've been working hard enough. Mayuri's eyes widened as he scowled at the captain. What was that? You admitted defeat so easily. It makes me wonder if you even tried. Of course I did, snarled Mayuri. However, I dash. Aizen grinned broadly and said, excuses are unlike you. Mayuri tightened his jaw. He said, just you watch. I'll find the little tramp easily. Hitsugaya eyed Aizen after glaring at Mayuri for the way he spoke to his vice-captain. The man was never liked by him. The little captain was offended by him for some reason, and when he is around this man, he hardly ever hears anyone else talk to him since his warning signs are so loudly ringing in his ears. Jin said, his eerie smile sending shivers through half the room, now, there's no need to speak that way about Matsumoto. So, the results? Asked Yamamoto Sutechu. Mayuri inhaled. Still in progress. Be sure that you make it quick. It's time Matsumoto is brought home. The white captain narrowed his eyes into a savage glare at Aizen and added, oh, it will be faster than you can blink. Yamamoto stated gravely, now, we have one more matter to discuss. Mayuri Taishu, has Rukia done what we feared? It seems so, but we're working on confirming it now. The Sutechu thought, I see. Let us discuss her fate if she has indeed done what we fear.